that's been 2016. And what I've found is, for me, the idea of, like, let's just call it distributed or decentralized technologies before we get into a blockchain. But the idea that you can build technology that empowers people, that you can build technology that supports people to make the choices that work for them and build their own software infrastructure to scale out, became the mission for, like, where I wanted to spend my time in my life. So that's kind of what's brought me here today. I'll go on in a second, but if anyone has anything to add or questions or comments, or I'll just pause and then we'll go on to a little bit more about blockchain, Web3, why I see it is exciting, etc.
Hi. Okay. Thank you so much, David. I have to get recording up here. Femi, we're trying to record this session so that everybody can have like a ready recording of it. Okay. Thank you so much for the brief intro, David. We could actually start the session proper now. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about distributed technologies, and then I'm going to answer a ton of different questions, right? So the fundamental idea with a distributed technology is that there's no single control, and we get that in a blockchain where what you have is a series, like, let's think about it from a technology perspective. You have a series of computers, let's just say, like, this is a computer, this is a computer, or whatever, this is a computer here. And in a blockchain network, they all need to be in the same state at all times, depending on exactly on how they do consensus. So what you usually get is you have a database, right? And your database serves information to your mobile apps and to all of your users, or desktop application. And you can have redundancy with your database, but you only need a single source. With a blockchain, you just have more than one sources, and they all need to be coordinated. Otherwise, the network is out of integrity. And where do you want that? Well, it happens that you want that in a ton of places where where inside an organization, maybe not, because the organization needs to control everything. But when you need organizations collaborating or different groups collaborating, you don't want to have one person controlling your technology infrastructure. So this is where, for example, on the Bitcoin blockchain, you emerge being able to build a global currency because no single group can take control over the computing, which means they can take control of the currency. So fundamental reason that I love it, and the fundamental reason that it has application across industries and massive application in the commercial world, is where you need to do interactions across organizations, where you don't want a single party to control. Then a blockchain is the perfect vehicle. Everything's transparent. People can interrogate what is happening on the chain. And so you don't need to build a system where you trust personally all of the parties, because the network forces trust on everybody. Right? So what's some interesting things that I can see happening right now? So obviously payments and payment settlements for in the financial services world is an absolutely huge one, where you want banks reconciling, or you have like the stock market, or all those kind of things where you could use the benefit of being able to have the integrity of information as well as the fast processing. But one really interesting one I'm working on at the moment is airline landing charges, where you have external data like when did a plane land, how much did it weigh, etc. You pull that into a contract, and then you do the reconciliation. So you pay the different airlines, the airport, and anybody else based on a calculation of what happened with the plane, how much it weighed, when it landed, etc. So that's a really laborious process that can take 2 or 3 months to handle, with really complex dispute resolution, etc. And on a blockchain, you can do instant settlement. So really, really powerful use case. And then I just want to show you guys something. But like this is something I've been working on for the last few years. So this is Holochain, and I'll just load this up. Okay, so you should be able to see my screen. Yeah, perfect. And I'm just going to open an application, and I have to share my screen again, and just because of how Google Meets work, I think that now works. Let me just see if I can. Here we go. All right. So this is a different version of a blockchain, right? Which is why I wanted to talk about distributed computing and decentralized computing. Because when we think about a blockchain, we think about like Bitcoin or Ethereum, a single ledger, which stores all transactions in blocks. And then we have these, we hear a bit about different solutions, which are like faster blockchains or sharded blockchains, etc. But ultimately, they're doing very similar things, just in different ways. But this is with Holochain. This is a peer-to-peer peer-to-peer coordination system. So here I'm just building a Kanban board, and you can see like some of the things that are going on in my Kanban. Adding cards, I'm doing whatever I want. And we see this is a serverless application. So I'm now just interacting with a network that I've created. I'm the only participant in this network. So I'm not paying any hosting fees or anything. I'm doing whatever I want with this Kanban board and adding cards. And we can have 10, 20, 100 people using this concurrently. So when I start looking at solutions like this, especially as they move on to mobile, we start to move into a world that's post-cloud computing. And you start this pendulum effect with you had originally like client server, and everyone would have servers in their own location, and you move gradually to the cloud. And then you're going to end up with something like this, which is distributed cloud, which is way more community centric. You have data privacy, you have control over your networks, control over your applications, etc. So when I think about this world, I'm not thinking about just like what is possible. I'll stop sharing a second. I'm not thinking just about what is possible that you can put on a ledger. I'm actually thinking about what's possible for the entire scope of computing, because what I've just showed you is like a simple productivity tool, but we could look at any single web or desktop application and be building them in distributed ways as well. So I think that's good, like enough of an intro to everything. What I'd love to do now is just answer as many questions as possible, if that works for everyone.
Yeah, I think that works. And there are some questions that were already pre-submitted.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so the fast track, should I answer them? So what's the fast track to learning blockchain technology? And I'd also like to know how blockchain applications are assisting businesses in the resolution of difficult and expensive issues. So should I go with that one first?
Yeah, sure, you can.
Yeah, super. Okay, so there's probably I've got a little bit of a bias with this question. But if we say, okay, what's the fast track? So firstly, there's two perspectives to learning. So one is you actually learn about the hardware and the infrastructure and how do blocks work, how does proof of stake work, proof of service, etc. But I think the question is coming more from a development perspective. How do I learn to develop on blockchain technology? How can I build smart contracts, etc.? And then what kind of things would I even be building smart contracts for? So on the getting started, it's actually something I've been working on for the last 3 years. So I'm just going to share a screen and give you a bit of a perspective again. Okay, so this is a product. So what you generally have with getting started on a blockchain is you have a programming language called Solidity, or there'll be a different smart contract programming language. And when we put our heads together, the people and I have been trying to look at this problem, we thought, well, actually, if blockchain is going to be widely adopted, you need to be able to have a human being be able to read and understand exactly what's happening. So when I'm minting an NFT, or when I'm depositing funds in a DeFi application, or whatever it's going to be, I as a normal user need to be able to understand. So then the idea of something like Rain is that anybody can understand, and they can read really simply and then write contracts, but they're only writing the critical part of the contract, which is the part that's being calculated. So here's like a game energy currency or a dollar cost averaging strategy. And you can see, then you can go in, you can read the contract, you can see with comments and then the way that the language is scripted, you can understand exactly what's happening. And then you could then come and fork this, deploy it. And then if you're interacting with it and like using this dollar cost average strategy, so let's just say I want to buy $10 of Ethereum every month for the rest of my life, you could write that strategy, deploy it, and then your vault would be created and you'd be able to then deposit. So here, you're not just using DeFi, you're actually creating your own financial products or your own technology products, right? So there's tools like this. There are lots of other tools. There are research. There's getting started guides like Third Web, and I can paste some notes in I can paste some notes in the chat at the end, or send them around to be distributed later on how you can get started. And then if I answer the next question, so how are blockchain applications assisting business in the resolution of difficult and expensive issues? Okay, so let's go to 2. So they're like hidden in plain sight. The first is Bitcoin solves a massive problem in building a currency on top of blockchain, offers the opportunity for a global exchange network bypassing the foreign exchange networks, SWIFT, and other forms of the banking system that are all owned and controlled by various groups. So if you would like the banking system or the financial system to work for you in a particular way, and it's not how the system is designed, before Bitcoin, there was nowhere to go. Right? Bitcoin allows you to pay anybody instantly, and there's all sorts of really interesting stories about, like, someone who moved $100 million of Bitcoin and paid a $3 fee. And if you tried to move $100 million in the banking system, you'd be paying $100,000 worth of fees, etc. Or you'd have to go through like hundreds of KYC checks and all sorts of things. So, like, literally, because the blockchain allows you to connect into it and participate just like anyone else in the network, as long as you're playing by the network's rules, then you're able to create an entire financial universe. So it's a pretty big business application, a currency that's in the, like, so I can't remember what Bitcoin is now, but its total market cap is like the size of, it's within the top 10 GDPs in the world. So it's in the size of, one of the top 10 countries. It settles billions of dollars every day. You can permissionlessly interact with the network, send money to any wallet, etc. That's a huge global problem solved, right? Then the next is we start to look at smart contract engine blockchains like Ethereum. And Ethereum solved a couple of really interesting problems. So they've solved firstly with like tokenization. How do you do fundraising, and how do you do permissionless fundraising of open source projects, etc., where, again, there's no central gatekeeper? And that's a really important part of a blockchain. There's no one who's saying you can participate or you can't participate unless they write it directly into the contract, which is completely different to the way the financial system works. It would work like you can only do this if you're an accredited investor. Whereas with Ethereum, 2017, 2018, people would start tokenizing things. And you had this completely new form of fundraising that hadn't existed before. And more lately, Ethereum, which started as this idea of a world computer, but has then moved into programmable money, offers decentralized finance applications. That is, yield is created through moving or through activity on the network. And if you're a participant in that, then you can share, and you're doing it at a protocol level. So you're literally reading code and connecting your wallet, depositing funds, and that code is then executed. And as long as it doesn't have a critical bug, etc., great. So these aren't business solutions as we would know. But if we think about a blockchain is true globalizing technology, right? So in Web 2, we have our data centers, we have and our applications, and we can see like different groups like Microsoft, etc., always is facing antitrust issues in the US, or they're not allowed to do something in China, etc., right? But a blockchain is truly globalizing. So what it's solved is the global scale rather than the regional scale. And when we're talking about what is it, business cases, building a top 10 GDP in 10 years of existence is completely unheard of. Now, that hasn't necessarily translated into businesses are fully running on a blockchain, etc. And we'll get to that in a second. But I just want to really impress upon you guys, actually, to build a top 10 GDP, or Ethereum one stage market cap was bigger than any other bank or any bank in the world. These are absolutely amazing statistics for the impact that a blockchain has had on business, right? Okay. So I would say, like, to what specific problems does it solve, and what are difficult and expensive issues? Moving money globally, creating an interoperable global standard for money, which Bitcoin and to some extent Ethereum have become, aggregating at a global level rather than a national, regional level. So you have a network that can't be owned or operated or controlled by a single government or a trade agreement, or all things that had never been done before. Now, we're then asking that question, like, well, what does that mean for business? That's a little bit slower, but I hope, like, when I give that aviation example, supply chain, financial services, what will start to end up is the following pattern. So just like the internet disintermediated almost every industry, decentralization will do the same. What will mean will be cooperation between companies will look different. So, for example, when we have these landing charge solutions, you won't have to have all of these operations in all different companies. You'll just have dynamic automatic settlement between plans landing on airports and everything that's happening in the airport. So what will start to blur is the line between one company and another. The other thing that will start to happen is that applications, like a little bit when I was showing you that Kanban board, applications will start to feed information into blockchain networks. And so we'll start to get way more interoperability of data, systems and processes, and we'll get way more automation of systems and processes as well. And then we should get a lot more collaboration. I think, like, just like it took 10 years for the Bitcoin and Ethereum blockchains to scale like they have, I think some of these solutions will emerge over the next decade. But critically, going to receive resistance from organizations, because the way distributed computing works, it's like Okay, so this idea of the theory of the firm, which in the early 20th century comes as like one of the biggest drivers of why organizations exist. And the theory of the firm says organizations exist because transaction costs within this network are lower than outside the network. In other words, if you have employees, and you guys would all know this from business, you have employees, you're on the same systems, use the email, shared culture, shared practices, you all start at 9 and end at 6 or whatever, and it becomes really easy to coordinate work. What's happening with Web3 and traditional businesses is Web3 is coming and saying a business in the future will look completely different. And right now, businesses are exploring it, but also a little bit resistant because they don't want to look different. So what will start to happen is people build new types of businesses, new types of operating model. Someone will end up building an aviation network completely on a blockchain, right? And it'll bleed in just like the internet did and start to transform the way companies operate. That's what I think the next 10 years is going to look like. But it's really hard to pinpoint right now exactly where that's happening because it works on a very different level than we're used to. Okay, so I'll go to the next question. What concept do you think the blockchain represents? I think I've answered that. What's the core philosophy as well? I think I've answered that. Trustless networks that anybody can participate in and anybody can build on top of. And how do I imagine the manifestation of this concept will look like 5 years from now? Yeah, I think that in 5 years, we'll have way more countries adopting Bitcoin, countries using decentralized financial protocols. I think the financial system will have become like this hybrid DeFi, TradFi system because it's just way cheaper to operate on a blockchain. If any of you guys have tried to ever buy shares or do foreign exchange, the difference between crypto, which is 24/7 and global, and the difference between like your local share registry, it's night and day. So I imagine global financial system will completely have transformed to decentralized. And then I would expect, like when I was showing you some of the Holochain tools, I would expect that a whole series of applications are emerging in distributed applications that are creating a value that no one expects. Why? Because it's cheaper to build. You don't have to pay for infrastructure costs like servers. You can control your network. You have privacy. And it's most likely for people going to be a better developed environment and a better commercial environment. So abstracting and building blockchain applications with better user experiences and use cases. Yep. So I think like what are barriers to entry? Wallets, buying the currency of the blockchain, couple of barriers to entry. What I shared earlier, not being able to read smart contracts. That's a big barrier, especially from a legal perspective. It's new, so DeFi protocols break, there are hacks, there are bugs, so very, very, very new. Also, crypto is subject to such boom and bust cycles that scares people away. And again, what I'm imagining over time is that distributed computing just feels a lot more like computing. It's just that you're playing in global markets with explicit rules, and you can participate or not based on those rules. So it becomes way less like interfacing with companies and way more just connecting with technology. Okay, I've got a few more there and a few here, but does anyone, just to break up the flow, does anyone want to ask me a question?
Yeah, I think there's some questions by the comment section, but if you want to ask your question by yourself, please do well to just unmute yourself and ask the question so that David can explain better.
Yeah, hi.
I think
yeah, sorry,
okay,
I just posted in the chat, but I had a question about, so currently we're launching a project, and we're trying to take some steps into building a community around the project. Do you have any either advice or different insights on how you would either develop that community, how to get people involved, and also how do you reduce things such as bad behavior or people trying to affect the core community behind your product?
Yeah. What's your product, just out of curiosity?
We're developing a learning module to combat online algorithms and algorithm bias. So,
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like, well, again, because, so let's just look at this. When anything is deployed on a blockchain, you need to be able to read what was deployed, and it's through the bytecode of a blockchain, but then you can get the bytecode, I guess, like a reader. And so the point is eventually it's published and therefore it's open source. Yeah. So then it doesn't work the same as the proprietary technology where we're able to hide the algorithm or the source code, etc., and like keep our commercial secret.
Really matters is that people care and people start to push what you're doing. So then, like, how do you build a really good community? So, like, I guess it's just really, in a way, normal things. So honesty and transparency about the team that's creating it, really clear what you're creating, informal, so social media, chat is great. Like Web3 communities or blockchain communities really transcend the personal and professional bounds. A lot of people in this world don't really have jobs or don't want to have jobs, etc. So, but they want to go really, really, really deep into something. People into Bitcoin were researching for months and months before going into Bitcoin, and so you get a lot of obsessive people where they can make it their lives. So in Holochain, for example, we have, I don't know, maybe a few hundred people who a major part of their life is supporting Holochain and supporting its growth, etc. So if you do something that's great, you're in integrity, and people care about it, what they'll do is step towards and want to make it a part of them. Because it's open, like even if you're building a business, it's a much more open. So there's room for people who care to come and participate. So there's probably a lot more. It depends on where you're at. You can send me a message, but there's a couple of people that I would really advise speaking to. When I've done community building, especially the people I've worked with have built communities have built schools and school networks and community around those kind of things, because they're deeply human. People care massively. People care about school, how their kids are being educated, what's the environment look like. You don't really care about technology communities until the blockchain like that. But that's the kind of skill set I've liked to collaborate with people on, because then they know, what are the right behaviors? What's the product market fit, essentially? Who are the people we're trying to attract? How do we support them? And it's not about money, actually. How do you give them what they need? And how do you block people who are counter to the ethos of the community, so you're nourishing like that really strong 5, 10, 50, 100 people that are going out and spreading the message. So yeah, that's a short answer.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, well, just because we got to see kind of a firsthand example of, when people are not impassionated by the project, and it's interesting to see, people come in and try to detract from something. But yeah, so that 100% that totally answers. So I guess my next question would have been, how do you incentivize that? And I guess in no short form, it would be passion, right? If you were to have something that people are passionate about, you can get them in turn to be passionate about your subject matter as well. If I'm understanding that correctly.
Yeah, there's a thing called the meta capital framework, which breaks down the world and like human interaction into 10 different capitals. And it's a really nice way of looking at what might people want, and I think so what's like, for example, growing the Holochain ecosystem. So that ecosystem is just a meta community. It's a community around the technology that has products built on it rather than a specific product. One of the things we've always done is not pay people for stuff. And people get really annoyed, and they come and they're like, well, do you have a grant? Can you pay me? And they're like, no, because if you care about what we're doing, you'll just care about it. In fact, you'll get offended if I offer to pay you, because you want to be here with your own agency, right? And then, of course, there are many times where you want to pay people for stuff in an organization to do specific tasks and deliverables. But when people are coming towards and saying, hey, what you're doing really, really matters, I want to help support it, they're never looking for money, and money is always that breaks that passion. So I've always had the rule of build on the passion, and then ideally you help people make money by they building a business or building something on top of what you're doing, rather than their focus is you. And I do this with the kids at home a lot. You try and teach, our job in home is to look out into the world and create in the world and come back together and just share and debrief and support each other. It's not to be focused on each other and what we can get from each other and our own relationships as much. They're just to be built and nourished. It's the same with community building to me. You want intrinsically motivated people connected to what you're doing because it matters and because you're good people. And then you just nurture that. And ideally, you have opportunities that come and you support them to take the opportunities. So you create a bigger pie rather than having them focused on, okay, if they do this, then I'm going to pay them that. And I can tell you, all of the blockchains and projects that focused on paid ambassadors and all this stuff, it never works. It never works, because once you start to introduce money into community, you change the motivation system. Right? So you get the true feedback when it's about people actually committing their time, their passion, etc. Okay. So I think it's Ambola now. There's a raised hand.
All right, I did. Okay, so thank you for the session. So I've been going through the documentation and I have some questions. So basically I've seen the demo you showed about the code, how it's more simpler and stuff. I could see there are a lot of abstraction. I'll be more interested in knowing what has been abstracted based on developer perspective. And secondly, as someone who has been building on EVM chains and why should I build on Holochain? Is it in terms of throughput, scaling, developer
yeah.
experience? What makes it different? Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so the two different systems. So the first, like when I showed you Rain is an abstraction on like basically Solidity is a compiled language and smart contracts are compiled languages, and Rain gives you an interpreted language. And that just means that it's the interaction is interpreted at runtime as the wallet is interacting with the contract to give a result. So it means you're able to put all the business logic in the calculation, and so you're able to build contracts with business logic neutral contracts with all your business logic, etc., in the calculation engine, which gets interpreted and people can run. So to do that, that means that you can focus all of your energy into the expression space rather than the underlying contracts. So you get way more creativity, faster response times, non-Solidity devs being able to build Solidity, be able to build new things, take different inputs, right? That from being on EVM chains that Solidity has a focus on really, really low-level opcodes because it's about hardware, etc., whereas Rain focuses on your high-level application opcodes. Holochain solves a different pattern, right? So a blockchain is based on highly coordinated data. That means that you need all of those nodes I showed you at the start to be in a single state at the same time. You can't have your different computers having a different perspective on the Bitcoin blockchain, because then if I've moved my Bitcoin to you, but that's recognized on one computer but not on the other computer, then I can double spend. I could then take the same Bitcoin and send it to somebody else and get something in return. And when the computers synchronize, suddenly that Bitcoin has moved to two different places and the network is out of sync, right? And I know with different blockchains, they have different versions, but ultimately in a blockchain, you need your level of coordination to prevent that from happening. Holochain is slightly different. So a blockchain, you could never, cool. Okay. No problem. Oops. Okay. So Holochain deals with loosely coordinated data. So that is, it's not dealing with the same level of coordination as a blockchain. And loosely coordinated data can come in the form of what I just showed. So the Kanban board, that is essentially just self-hosted open source code. So I'm running an application. Very, very different. In a blockchain, I'm not running an application, I'm running a ledger. When I build a dApp, that just is an application built on top of a ledger that allows a wallet to interact with the ledger via the rules of the application, right? Holochain, you're actually running an application. So its purpose is that if you want peer-to-peer applications, so if you want to be able to build private networks that no one can be part of, if you want GDPR, if you want to connect without having to pay server costs or infrastructure costs, if you want to be able to build applications that can go online, but then also be in mesh networks if the internet's down and then synchronize online back when it's up, Holochain is a perfect use case. But Holochain is not trying to get to a single global state. Like, just like, I guess if you look at your bank account and someone else looks at their bank account, it doesn't matter it doesn't matter that your transactions aren't ordered globally. They can just be entered however, and all you need to validate is this the right balance in my bank account? And someone else just needs to say, oh, this is the right balance in my bank account, and then I can transact. And Holochain comes at the problem from a similar perspective, right? So it just says global state is really important in some cases when you need a permanent record for everything. Relative state is relative. So if I'm doing chat, I don't need my chats ordered and they're forever. But do I want to do chat on WhatsApp, or do I want to do chat on a network where I know all the participants, I know nothing else is going on, I can set the rules, etc., 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 etc. So yeah, that's kind of the problem space the Holochain enters. We've got 2 more minutes, so one more question, I think.
Yeah, I think one more question, because we have like 2 more minutes. Okay, we can actually take like 10 more minutes because of our system rogue. Anybody who wants to ask a question can just, mute yourself and ask. I think Abimbola, you want to go ahead and ask this question more clearly. I get it. I don't know. Hi, Abimbola. Can you
Okay,
hear me?
so what I was trying to say is like I understand like what makes it different now. Like it doesn't operate the way Ethereum works, like global singleton kind of architecture.
Yep.
So will you say this is more efficient for like sort of like consortium kind of architecture or permission system?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so. Yeah, as I said earlier, I would be looking at how does the entire computing paradigm change, and do we end up completely on distributed systems? I would argue that groupware, productivity, collaboration, communications, social networks, all these kind of things are going to move into distributed systems because it makes more sense in current networks. We create content according to the rules of the particular platform, and we have to play by their rules. We can get deplatformed, etc. I can see the wave in the last 5 years moving way more to distributed systems. So, yeah, I'd say that really all I'm presenting here today when we're talking about enterprise use of a blockchain is, rather than calling it a blockchain, if I talk about decentralized systems, then we're moving from the concept of a ledger to actually any application. And so when are we going to be able to, when would we want to run applications that are distributed or decentralized? And then like there's some of the benefits for doing it, and people are just going to adopt step by step. But I think the implications for business once the entire application is run on chain are absolutely are profound, because what we're going to get is completely different types of businesses being built. And I think like that's where the change is going to come.
All right, thank you. So I want to confirm, do you have like projects related to like the health ecosystem built on Holochain?
Yep. Built on Rain, built on Holochain. So I work across the spectrum, and yeah, there's all sorts of really exciting stuff getting built. Yeah, I mean,
is there a way I can get like link or access to such projects?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best way is to just get my details and send me a message on Telegram or Twitter or something like that, and then I can just connect you rather than sending links into the chat.
Okay, please, what's your Twitter handle?
Okay, hold on a second.
Yeah, I think maybe David can drop his Twitter handle for all of us to follow him. I think this session has been quite very insightful, irrespective of the odds being hacked along the line. But yeah, it's been very insightful. Thank you all for like showing up and participating into this webinar session. Thank you for joining back, even when the link, went down. Yeah, that shows that we have a very strong community and that you guys are so willing to like get the value, get the knowledge. Yeah, do we have more questions that we want to ask David before he goes? Because David is actually very busy, and if you don't get to connect with him so well today, I'm sorry, I don't know. So if you have questions you want him to clarify, maybe you want
sir,
to
I have
David,
to,
your
guys, I have
Twitter
to go.
DM is actually locked.
What's that? Sorry.
Your Twitter DM is locked.
Oh, okay. I'll open my Twitter DM.
follow him on Twitter, please.
Yep. I'll open my DM. I've got to go to a call though, guys. I've got a hard stop on the hour. I mean, I'm very happy to do another. Let me just. And this is my Telegram link, so you could just DM me on Telegram. I'm really happy to come and do another session if you guys want. If that would be helpful and I could answer more questions, just let me know.
All right. Thank you so much, David. Thank you for coming in. Yeah.
Okay. You can DM me on Twitter now as well. I've just opened that up.
Of course. Please do well to, if you have more questions you want us to pass across to him, please also drop it on the Slack channel so that we could pick them up and try to probably send across to David on Telegram and he will answer. Right. Thank you so much, David, for coming on board. Thank you for giving so much value. Thank you for the work that you're doing in the ecosystem, blockchain ecosystem, and trying to teach more people and bring more people on board. This is actually so inspiring. Please, I say thank you to David. Thank you for coming on board today. So do well to like unmute yourself, say something nice, or just type it there. Let David read your warm wishes. Let's go. Yeah, thank you. Also, thank you all for joining. Over 50 people joined this space today. Thank you so much for showing up. Thank you for being a part of our community. Thank you for showing up for us, honestly. Thank you all for joining. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I can see all the thank yous rolling in. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Thank you so much, everyone. Great to meet you all.
Yeah.
Welcome.
All right. Well, look forward to hearing from you and look forward to seeing the great things that you build.
Yeah, thank you. Bye, David. Have a lovely, lovely weekend. Also, everyone, have a great weekend. You know,
All right.
and big day. We'll see you on Monday.
Thank you, Precious. Bye.
Thank you,
Thank
Precious.
you. Thank you, Isaac. Thank you, Abimbola. Yeah, it's one of those things. Okay, so just to say it, in case anybody is planning on hosting events that they need to like share the link, make sure you don't share your link on social media, because once you mistakenly put out a link, an open link on social media, just bear in mind that you have a 90% chance of being hacked. Do you understand? The best you can do is to put up a registration flyer, right? And people register, then you add them to the calendar, or you add them to a community like Slack. You know, we share a lot of links on Slack, and we don't get hacked, right? That's the way to do it. So that way, you know, you vetted the number of people that are accessible to this link, and it's not just an open link somewhere on social media. Do you understand? Yeah. So that's what happens when you're a CM. You get to experience all of this, and I think this is my third time of experiencing it. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining, and also leaving when I said you should leave and joining back. Obedience, community members.
You have to join. You have to join.
All right, guys. Bye. Maybe you want to say hi to some other people. That's Adimola.
Adimola.
Yeah, we're packing up. We're going home. Bye.